Hi, I'm Danny Ehrlich with Christian Friends of Israeli Communities here in the Jewish community of Otniel, here in the South Hebron Hills, south of Judah. We're stepping back here over 3,000 years ago to the days of Joshua and Caleb and Otniel, the namesake of this town, Otniel. And what's the story that we come here? When the tribes of Israel conquer Canaan under Joshua, we're here in the tribal allotment of Judah. And you remember that Caleb, one of the spies sent by Moses to check out the land before the supposed invasion when the children of Israel in the desert, and you remember 10 of the 12 spies betray their mission, but Caleb stays faithful. When the land is conquered, Caleb will lead the conquest of this part of Judah. He's the head of the tribe of Judah. And the city of Hebron, with the Ma'arat HaMachpelah, the Machpelah cave, the burial place of the patriarchs and the matriarchs, will become part of his family's patrimony, his family's nachala, as we say in Hebrew, his family's inheritance. But we're right here just southwest of Hebron. And this area is described in the Bible as Eretz HaNegev, also as Devir and Kiryat Sefer. Now we know in modern Israel, modern Hebrew, Negev means the southern desert, south of Beersheba, well south of here. But Negev essentially means referring to the south. And when it's used to describe southern Judah, it's letting us know that southern Judah was a dry, wilderness-like area. Which means, what does wilderness mean? It means if you till it and take care of it, it can be productive and grow crops and a good place to raise sheep and other flocks. But it doesn't get much rain. It's very much dependent on the springs and the streams that come through here. Now, when Caleb conquers Hebron, which is just to our north here, northeast from here, he makes an announcement. The area south of Hebron needs to be conquered from the Canaanites as well. And he says, whoever shall be able to conquer the area of Kiryat Sefer, Devir, the Negev area, for the tribe of Judah, will have my daughter Achsa as a wife. Apparently Achsa was worth fighting for. And who steps to the fore? Well, a relative of Caleb, Otniel, son of Kenaz, who is apparently a nephew of Caleb, and he says, I can do it. And he conquers this area from the Canaanites, and this becomes part of Judah, and as a reward, he gets the daughter of Caleb, Achsa, as his wife, who's a smart cookie from the biblical text, and he gets this area here as part of his family's patrimony. But he, together with Achsa, they realize, wait a minute, we're here at the edge of the desert. It's a dry area. It's great land, but if we don't have water sources, how will we be able to build life here? And they go back to Caleb, Achsa's father, and Otniel's father-in-law, and say, we need water sources. And that's where, again, we have this in Joshua 15 about the borders, and in Judges 1, where the Otniel will be awarded the upper springs and the lower springs, the upper waters and the lower waters, which are down in the valley. They're still here down in the valley beneath us here, between Otniel of today and Hebron to our north. In 1983, when this Jewish community was established, they decided to name it Otniel, remembering Otniel, who conquered it for the tribe of Judah over 3,300 years ago, and coming full circle to the beautiful Jewish community that's here today.
We're here in Otniel, and Danny just gave you the biblical history of Otniel. Well, if we go back to the early 80s, what's going on here in general with regard to settlement in Judea and Samaria? So we have the first community that was established in this area right after the Six-Day War, and that was Kiryat Arba, what started as Hebron, and then it ended up in this town, Kiryat Arba, in 1971. Okay, and there was a bit to the north of here, close to Bethlehem, in that Gush Etzion area. But basically in this area, from 1971 until the 80s, nothing is going on. It's only towards the end of the 70s that we start seeing settlement starting in Samaria. And then in the early 80s, actually the thinking already starts in the late 70s. Menachem Begin is the prime minister. He has already changed the policy of the government, and there is a positive, encouraging attitude towards settlement. And word goes out to young people all over the country. We, the government of Israel, will encourage you to start a community. And so a group of people in the early 80s, originally from Beersheba, get together and say, you know what, we're a group, we're going to form a little group. They would call that in Hebrew a gar'in, which literally means a nucleus, but this would be a settlement group. And they said, you know what, let's get together, let's talk to the government. Where would you like us to settle? And because they were already coming from the southwest, it was most convenient for them to settle somewhere nearby, and they were given this area on the top of a hill overlooking biblical Dvir. Now, originally, they wanted the name of this community to be Dvir, except there was one problem. There was already a Dvir, and that Dvir is actually not here in Judea, but west of here, on the other side of the pre-67 lines, because that's a community that was founded after the establishment of the State of Israel, but before 1967. And it's the closest they thought they'd ever get to biblical Dvir. So even though it was a few miles from here, it already had the name Dvir. So since that name was already taken, they looked for another name, and of course Otniel seemed the most logical choice, because it is Otniel who, of course, comes into possession of biblical Dvir. And that's why this community is named Otniel. Now, the first people that came here, they settled in a fairly typical fashion. Initially, they were in temporary housing, and eventually permanent homes were built. And over the years, the community grew. It is not a large community. Even today, there's less than 200 families living here, only about 1,000 people. But in the early 90s, there was a real boost to this community when a couple of rabbis established a yeshiva here, a Bible school, a school for men after high school, and it's one of these yeshivas that is referred to as a Hesder yeshiva, and that the young men here combine their compulsory military service with their studies, their Bible studies. And this is a program that is recognized and supported by the Israeli government. So typically boys spend 5 years here. Of those 5 years, between 1.5 years and 2 years, they're in active military duty. And the rest of the time, they're considered like reservists, but meanwhile, they're dedicating their full-time activity to the study of the Bible and the Talmud. And as a result of this yeshiva, many of the young men who came here to study ended up settling here. They met their wives, they got married, they lived here, and they started building their families here. One of the greatest challenges that the people of Otniel have had to face, particularly in recent years, has been unbelievable terrorism. Even when there were far fewer terrorist attacks in other parts of the country, because this area is much more isolated and surrounded by particularly hostile Arab communities, the people in this particular community have lost so many dear ones. I just remember a few. There was Mickey Mark, who was very, very involved in the yeshiva itself. There was Daphna Meir, a woman in her 40s who had done amazing things, had been a real inspiration for women all over this area. She herself had been a foster child as a child and ended up in a wonderful, wonderful family who gave her a fabulous spiritual grounding. And so she, in addition to her many children, she also fostered a few children as well. And these are just two individuals of the, unfortunately, too many people in this country that have been murdered. So it is not easy to live in Otniel. And one of the things that we have been working on and are working on here in Otniel is to try to strengthen the fabric of the community. We have supported the music program. We have supported the library. We have supported refurbishing the social hall in the synagogue. All of these things to make it easier for the community to come together, to find strength from one another, and to keep going. I am confident that Otniel will continue to grow in the years to come. It is truly an amazing place, and I hope that you will join me here one day in person so that we can visit Otniel together. This is Sondra Oster Baras with Christian Friends of Israeli Communities here in Otniel. I hope you enjoyed that video, and we'd like to be sure you're getting all of our video content. So just click on the subscribe button below as well as on the notification bell, and that way you will have easy access to all our material. We look forward to staying in touch with you. God bless you, and have a wonderful day.